Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series. Today I'm joined by Sophie from the Highbury Squad. How you doing, Sophie? You well?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good. You got a new microphone, I see. You are outside and you're doing stuff in the house, and she's just attaching the hardwired internet to get crisp sound.
Awesome.
How
there
are
we
you,
go.
though? You all good?
I'm epic. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. Just turned 50 and got myself a Yeti X out of it. So I'm happy. New mic, all good.
What kind of person puts microphone on their birthday list?
Me.
That's the world that we live in the YouTubing land of asking. I got this microphone for a birthday present, I think, as well. So yeah, it's a crazy world of YouTubing. Obviously, it's the international break, which means we've been without football for a little bit. Only international football's been played, which is frankly quite boring at times. And obviously, after 3 defeats, there's nothing more we want than to see Arsenal back and making up for lost time. We basically wasted so much time with those 3 defeats already this season. Are you confident going into those games against Norwich and Burnley that we can turn things around?
No, not really. And, it's really funny, the international break. I used to be so excited to watch England and international football back in the day. And now it does feel like the Premier League growth and just the excitement of the league and European football, unless it's like the Euros or the World Cup, I think everything in between now is a little langweilig, as they say in Germany. But
boring.
I don't think it's negative to say that you don't hold a lot of optimism, because when you can see where we are and how we've started, there's a lot to kind of maybe be hopeful for, but hope isn't a plan, Tom. And I hope, the only thing that I'm living for is the fact that these new players can actually come together. I mean, if we lose against Norwich, I don't think we've scratched the surface of Arsenal implosion or Arsenal fan implosion if we lose that game. We can't lose that game. And if we do, how damning. How damning would it be if we were to lose that game,
Would losing against Norwich mean that there is really no way back for Arteta at that point? Is that, bottom of the league, the other team that's lost all 3 games has the same -9 goal difference. Is that a no way back scenario?
Well, you can't lose to 2 newly promoted teams in the space of, the first.
You can. So
okay, you're going to keep correcting me. I love it. I love it when I'm Tom corrected. Yes, it's possible, but how damning would it be to lose to another promoted team, and one that is as woeful as we are? With Brentford, you could sense the excitement. They hadn't been in the top tier of football for 70 years. Whereas with Norwich, they've been a yo-yo team, right? A little bit like West Brom, teams that kind of go up and down. And we've seen their story and their narrative before. So you can't lose this game to a Daniel Farke side. And is it Daniel? Is his first name Daniel? It is, right?
Yeah, Daniel Farke, yeah.
Yeah, Daniel Farke. And then expect to keep your job. I just cannot fathom that that's the type of club that we've become. To lose to Brentford, yes, okay, you can lose to the champions of England and Chelsea, but the manner in which we've lost to these teams is the most horrific part of all of this. And I'm not saying if we put in a good showing against Norwich and lose, Tom, then that will be good enough, because I don't even think that will be good enough at this point.
No,
We've got to win that game.
We have to win it, and we have to win it not just scraping through. We have to win it well. We have to play well. We have to show that we've progressed over these 2 weeks. And whilst certainly those players that have been on international break haven't yet been around the pre-season preparations, there's a lot of players that are still at the club and are still going to be preparing for that game. We've played that it feels like a pre-season friendly, because it feels like our season's not started. Behind closed doors friendly against Brentford, which we won 4-0. And obviously there was a lot of good things about that. Gabriel and Ben White coming back and seeing players like Ainsley Maitland-Niles given a chance in midfield, Cedric scoring twice, Lacazette scoring 2, Gabriel scoring himself as well. Martinelli got a start in that game too. Charlie Patino and Amari Hutchinson got minutes with the first team. All positives. And we played a 3 at the back system, which is obviously really strange, because we've not seen that in kind of a free-flowing attacking sense. It's only been used against Man City to try and hold the line, except we didn't do it all too well against Man City at the Etihad. Do you think that you could kind of double down on that back 3, or would you continue with the back 4 we've seen at the start?
None of this matters. Behind closed doors games, friendlies, none of it matters. What matters is what and how we perform in the Premier League and getting 3 points. I understand those games are important for preparation, but also, is it indicative of Arteta's own self-stress and pressure, knowing that he is under the cosh and that he has to make and adapt? And is it also possible that now he supposedly has his own team, fair few are away on international duty, of course, that he now feels like he can execute the system that supposedly Tom he has always wanted to. Now you're far more intelligent than I am when it comes to tactics, but it appears that well, every time I spoke to someone, they said, "Oh, he wants to play a 4-3-3," but now it's like he wants to play three at the back. Now clearly we've played our better games having that three at the back. But I think that now he's under intense pressure. He's got to shake things up a little bit. And if this is going to be something that helps the team going forward and he's playing to the strengths of the players that he has, I think Ben White and Gabriel could really excel in that. You've got Double T, as I like to call him, Takahiro, who is coming into the side. Is a really good, like Ben White, is a good ball carrier as well. So now you've got really two good ball carriers coming out the back, and Gabriel, who's much stronger in the air than Ben White, no doubt about that. So there's this complementary essence to that team. And I think we have to be able to see them play together before we absolutely kill this project completely. I'm not an Arteta fan, as you know, but I am willing to give this team a shot to see how they gel together. And if he can't pull it together, not only against Norwich, but Burnley, that's going to be a tough game. We only got 1 point off them last season. Can't go into the North London derby having 2 points or 1 point and losing to them as well. And of course, we all know derbies are different. Form goes out the window, the old cliche. But you can't come out of that keeping your job if we get like 1 or 2 points out of those 3 games. I mean, that starts going into October time, Tom, and that's really dangerous. Dangerous recipe.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think we go through the next 3 games against Burnley, Norwich, and Spurs, that, as you said, that is then October. And if, say, you manage to pick up 1 to 2 points from your first 6 games and you're already in October, it's a point where if you don't move on from the coach at that point, I don't think there's a season to rescue. Like, from the position that we would be in and how many points we would be behind our target of top 6, which is, you imagine that's the target they've set themselves to get back into Europe this season. So to carry on after some really poor results would boggle the minds. However, I've seen this club make some weird decisions in the managerial aspect, and they held on to Emery, I thought, for too long. Obviously, we know about the Wenger situation going on too long. That was more down to him than the club. So with Arteta, it is, like you say, it's going to be an opportunity to see what we're capable of with what I feel will be our best team. And I don't include, to be honest, Granit Xhaka in that. And his suspension, I think, may end up being a bit of a blessing rather than a curse for us. And maybe seeing Lokonga and Partey, if Partey is indeed fit, together is something I'm really excited about in the midfield. Seeing those two play together with their mobility and how much dynamism they're going to bring to the midfield as well. It is intriguing to me what he chooses to go with from a formation standpoint. But a couple of kind of the other things that we've got to think about from a team selection perspective is also the attacking midfield part of it, because Ødegaard has played a great game for Norway the other day on the right-hand side. And that was an interesting kind of positional play there. Smith Rowe, we know, has played a lot on the left, which is also something he's excelled at. And for me, I've kind of been, I don't know if I've been wearing my sandwich board too many times about playing 3-4-2-1, but I like the idea of playing 2 number 10s behind Aubameyang. I like the idea of it being both Emil Smith Rowe and Martin Ødegaard. You've then got the opportunity to play, say, a Saka and a wing-back role to overlap Smith Rowe, and you can play either Tomiyasu or someone on the right-hand side, Ainsley Maitland-Niles possibly at right wing-back, or you can play Pepe in kind of a weirder role in that position. I think there is options, but how do you structure the forward line? Because there's so many options for Arteta to choose from.
You know, it's really funny. We asked the listeners the other day to pick their 11 on Kev's show on Friday, and I was gobsmacked not gobsmacked, but I was really surprised that Pepe was not in a lot of fans' team. And I found that to be really interesting, considering Pepe has been a really good outlet for goals despite the fact that maybe on the eye, Pepe is never an easy watch.
Yeah.
But I think what he does is a little unseen. And I just thought that when we're struggling and we don't know what Aubameyang we're going to get so far this season, why he wouldn't be in it. Now, Saka, I think, has played a lot of football. But if he can reproduce a little bit of the form he's shown for England, to be honest with you, look, he should not be immune to criticism. He's being treated like this, you know, I don't know how to analyze it, but it's like you have this beautiful pearl, you know, and it's protected in this shell, and you don't want to touch it, you don't want to harm it. It's just the prettiest thing. And Saka, I think we don't want to fall into the trap of overly protecting him to the point where, you know, he does become immune to criticism. Now, I know he's only 20, just turned 20, and I do think, though, if you're going to put him up on that pedestal, he's got to have a better end product. He's got to be able to make better decisions in the final third, and he's got to start scoring goals. And I think one of our biggest challenges, no matter who plays in that forward line or what that creative front looks like, Tom, they've got to score more goals. Emile Smith-Rowe has to score more. Saka has to score more. We've got to get goals from Ødegaard as well, whether Martinelli plays, whether Laka plays. Now, Laka's positioning is a little bit different because he's that number 9 where he holds up the ball so well. He brings other players in. You know, he opens up spaces for other players. And I think sometimes that goes a little unsung. And I know he doesn't score as much, but he's probably one of our best players without the ball. And we're one of the poorest teams in the league without the ball. So these are the small things, the minor details that are fundamentals that we just have to start getting right. In terms of playing with 2 number 10s, I don't have a problem with that either. There was a game last season, Tom, I don't know if you remember. It was probably Willian's best game. It was against Sheffield United away. And in that second half, I think it was Willian and Saka who were swapping. You know, we were confusing Sheffield United. They were shifting into a 10 role. They were shifting, you know, to the flanks. And it was just really great to watch the movement and the movement off the ball as well. It was probably one of our.
Away?
Was it Leicester? Was the 3-1? That was brilliant.
Willian was great that game. Like, that was genuinely where Willian was, because Sheffield United, Willian came off the bench, and we started with Ceballos in kind of a deeper role next to Thomas Partey, and he was kind of that deep. So you basically what you had was you had Thomas turning into kind of the single number 6. And Ceballos basically became a second number 10, because Saka technically played at number 10 that day, because Pepe and Martinelli played on each flank.
Maybe it was the Leicester game. I know that we did that. We did pretty well against Sheffield United playing like similarly, but that Leicester game, it should be the blueprint for everything that was good about the good that happened last season and what Arteta can actually do as a coach and how these players can actually perform, right? So I think you're going to see Oba on the left again, no? Do you think Oba's going to start down the middle? Do you think he'll play Saka, Oba? I mean, I feel like this Oba on the left versus down the middle, he almost won the Golden Boot twice playing on the left. In his 2 best seasons for us, he was a lot of the time he was playing on the left, especially in that second season when we won the FA Cup. I don't care where he plays as long as he scores goals. But to be fair to him, a lot of the times he's made runs and he's been in positions, but we just haven't had that creative outlet. So the fact that we don't have that natural creative player, doubling down on it the way you said, I wouldn't mind seeing that and trying it against Norwich. I don't want to experiment, but we should go for it. You know, we should really go for it. He's got to take the handbrake off for real this time, not just say it, do it.
Yeah, and I think that we have played so restrictively. Like, we've been playing as if you say, like, we've had the handbrake on, and it just doesn't feel like people have got license to do as they want. And players like Ødegaard or Emile Smith-Rowe feel a bit shackled in their areas of which they're playing. It's almost like he's overcoached them in some senses. Like, there's not enough for him. I used to have Arsene Wenger that would just sit and watch his team deliver the performances that he was asking for, and he very rarely get up. You then had Unai Emery that was much more kind of vocal and expressive in how he was on the touchline, and it's still like you saw a couple of moments of play from his team that you thought, okay, I can get what he's doing at the Leicester game at home again. That really kind of showcased what the Emery team could do. Arteta is for me, he's too much on the touchline, too much trying to tell people what to do. It doesn't allow them that freedom. And if they fall just ever so slightly out of kilter, he's like drawing them back in, positioning them in different places. And it's too much to almost think about. It's like if you need to be on the touchline orchestrating every single second of the game, then surely what you're doing on the training pitch isn't enough. Because what you do in midweek, but especially now without European football, and now you've got a whole week to prepare, the players should know instinctively through their coaching on the training pitch what they need to do.
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that I know it was West Brom and they had 6 debutants in that team, and under 23s and stuff. But is it not interesting that in that match, I don't care who you're playing against, you play who's opposite you, and you still have to play well and get a result. And if we'd lost that, it would have been a nightmare. But we didn't. We won. And it was the one game since he's taken over 19 months ago where he didn't really stand on the touchline and yell the entire match. And there was a moment in the Chelsea game where he was yelling at Emile Smith-Rowe, right? And Emile Smith-Rowe kind of looked at him confused, as if to say, I don't think Emile Smith-Rowe was saying, I can't hear what you're saying. I think he was looking at him to say, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Right? And, we've had these, I think, a lot, there has been a report that says that he does a bit too much and the players are overloaded. And some players need to be a little bit more free thinking. It's just like any job you have. When someone micromanages you, you start feeling a little bit more introverted. You don't express yourself. You start questioning everything that you do. And I think that's been a big problem. And I don't think it's got anything to do with the fact that we have a lot of young players. I think he's a control freak. And he tries to do things like thinking he's Pep and he's got players like he had at Manchester City. And that's just not the case.
And you can tell his surprise when it doesn't work. Like you can tell when he's kind of reached the end of what he's capable of and going, I've tried everything. And it's not, and you tell that from like the post-match press conferences and interviews that he does, that he tries to defend things that I don't think he's necessarily. You don't feel like the words he's saying he actually believes at times with some of those interviews. Real Yanis says,
if they can't believe it, if the players can't believe it, then you can't expect the fans to accept what you're trying to do.
No, and it's obvious. Like you can see from the lack of system and the lack of pattern of play, like that there is a real issue. The Rihanna says, Tom, I second what you said about 3-4-2-1, Saka at left wing back, but what do you and Sophie think about Ramsdale? I want to see him start. Also, like what you said, isn't it horrible people are crapping on our signings who are still very capable? Let's break that down into 2 parts then. Ramsdale, Sophie, does he start for you against Norwich over Leno?
For me, Leno should never start another game for Arsenal. Woof. After expressing that he wants to leave and that he's going to leave on a free next summer, for me, he comes in if Ramsdale's injured. I would not start him at all. You can't keep playing players who don't want to be at the club. Now, when you read Willian's interview since he's left, the dude was miserable at Arsenal, never really wanted to join the club. He was a Chelsea man through and through. And they made that happen, right? But you could tell the guy never wanted to be there. You just can't keep doing that. It's detrimental to the team, to the dressing room. It undermines players who do want to be there, who do want to wear the shirt and play for the Arsenal. For me, this is the game to make the change. Now, does Arteta have the balls, Tom, to do that? Is he going to have I would love to have seen if Xhaka was available for the Norwich game, if he would have started. Is Thomas Partey starting? Is he?
We were told that he'd be back in full training ahead of that game, so we assume so.
Right. So I would have been curious to see if he'd have stuck with Xhaka, but, Kolasinac, Xhaka didn't want to be there. Rewards him with a new contract, and then they expect fans to just be silent and not get upset about that.
They actually activated a clause in his previous deal. Like it wasn't like they had to negotiate a contract with Xhaka. It was a clause in the old contract that they could extend it for a year plus an extra year on top of that. And it was like as if they weren't going to agree a fee with Roma. There was no one else interested in Xhaka, so they just decided to extend the contract. And I've gone back and forth with that because I'm like, well, if you let that contract run down to just a year in 2022, If you want to move him on, you're going to get nothing. But if you renew it, then maybe you can get more money if you were going to sell him. But that's the only way I can justify it. And you know me, I try and find balance in everything.
Tom,
but I can't. Yeah.
If we couldn't sell him after he had that kind of Euro tournament, who's going to buy him if he has a crap season at the Arsenal? I mean, it's mind-blowing. I understand the contract and the protection part of it. But if we couldn't sell him at the height of his performances, what makes anyone think we're going to be able to sell him when we couldn't offload? We couldn't sell Sokratis. We couldn't sell Mustafi. We couldn't sell Ozil. We can't sell Kolasinac. We pretty much have given Bellerin away. I mean, what makes anyone think the club are going to be able to sell Xhaka if he has this kind of season? Immature, absolutely stupid, red card against Chelsea, hurt his team. His stats for being sent off are ridiculously bad. And what do? We reward him with a new contract. Oh, more money. That money could have gone to another player. So they've got to be careful of these things, and fans have every right to be a little peeved when it comes to those kinds of moves. I can't remember the second part of the question, but I think it was Ramsdale, which we answered, right?
Yeah, Ramsdale, yeah. The other part was about kind of how there's people kind of already judging our signings in a negative light when they've barely played, which it's not one I don't think we need to go into loads of detail about. I think that we know that there is hyperbole amongst the fan base, especially towards
But it's
signings,
other people too. It's ridiculous. Gary Neville. Okay, what's United's strategy been? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer hasn't even won anything. But what he's done is improve them in the league. They've got a better squad, and he got them to second place. Pressure's on him, though, now. He's lost every final he's been in. He should have won the Europa League and didn't. So it's kind of ridiculous that, he's pointing the finger at the Arsenal when Solskjaer really had no identity to this team until really the best part of last season, right? And, Kev and I talked about it, whether it's Sky Sports, TalkSport, and I contribute to both, but I'm glad that I am able to do that because at least there's people out there that will support the club and that narrative. You can't just keep throwing darts at Arsenal. We don't help ourselves. But now it's become a game to a lot of people, like Jamie O'Hara and folks like that. And that's where the rubber meets the road for me. You know what? We're not perfect. We are far from the club we used to be. But let's not clickbait Arsenal every single minute you get the chance to do that. It's ridiculous.
I do. It is really hard to get frustrated when you hear comments that are clearly designed to rile things up. And every single time I write a piece, I am trying to do it with the best intention of being informative rather than reactionary. And it's in the world of media, it's a fine line that you tread sometimes. But I would always endeavour to be objective rather than provocative in what was written. So look, Tom Sabot in the chat says, question, I'm partial to the 4-4-2. Do you think it would work? Aubameyang, Pepe, Emile Smith-Rowe, Ødegaard, Partey and Saka, Tierney, Gabriel, White and Tomiyasu. Call me crazy, I would take it. Keep up the good work, Tom and Sophie. Do you like the idea of a 2 up top system?
David Hillier and Kevin were talking about this. Why not play a 4-4-2? And I was like, wow, do teams eat? And I was, again, not a tactical genius.
Who plays 4-4-2?
Who plays 4-4-2? Ken's like, well, there is a few teams that play 4-4-2. Why not? Why not? At this point, I think Arteta needs to be open-minded. And he needs to be open-minded based on the players available to him. Now, we don't know how players are going to come back from the international break. Hopefully, there's no injuries, Tom. Hopefully, everyone comes back. I know El Neni's injured. There's still another game to go for everybody. But, if you have Ben White, Gabriel, you got a fit Tierney, who, by the way, has had a terrible season so far. Tierney also not immune to criticism.
He's been very exposed, to be fair.
His manager has set him up to fail, but at the same time, I think he hasn't helped himself in certain spots. So, but if you then have Partey, Lokonga, you've got Pepe, you've got Saka, you've got Emile Smith-Rowe, Ødegaard, Aubameyang, that is not a bad football team. Those are decent players, but they haven't played together. And again, I'm not Arteta's biggest fan, but we have to see how they can play together and whether, some of these players are going to be able to execute a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-2-1 or a 3, whatever it is. That's going to be down to Arteta to get it right. But I'm not adverse to it at this point. I'll try anything to get out of that bottom spot.
Likewise, I just want to see Arsenal play well in whatever that formation looks like.
Exactly.
Joe says, I wonder if he has forgotten what it's like to be a player. He has fully imitated Pep, but he played under two great managers. He's forgotten about that. I mean, it is important that the separation between player and manager, because it is a very, very different role, different mindset, different environment to be in. And I think that Arteta has definitely struggled with the fact he had to come into a team where his players, some of them were his teammates previously, like Callum Chambers, Mesut Ozil, of course, too. Like, there's been players there that were there when he was playing, and that's a really odd time. I mean, listening to Paul Merson talk about when he took over, I think, at Walsall, when he was obviously a player manager and then became manager, and he just couldn't demand the respect of the players. And I feel like Arteta's gone very authoritarian with his approach to the team to try and combat his lack of experience with the side. And I think, unfortunately, with cases like Guendouzi and Saliba and Ozil, it's massively backfired on him, and maybe is costing the respect to a few of his players and the likability from some of his players. And now I'm really interested when we get to the end of the season and we see this documentary to see the dynamic behind the scenes. I know it's going to be a version of the truth that is really going on. I'm sure it will be, but we will still get some insight into kind of the dynamic of the club and the team and how the players act and are behind the scenes with this coach, if this coach remains coach for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah.
We are going to go through more of your questions in the chat. We've got about 15 more minutes or so left of the show. So if you have got any questions, guys, please do throw them into the chat box. There's lots of questions about kind of suggested formations and suggested lineups. Of course, we have covered that. So if you want to throw in some more variety, please do. Jonathan says, Sophie, do you think Arteta's stubbornness/arrogance will be his downfall?
You know, I've seen a lot of successful business people lose everything because of ego and poor decision making, right? Ego comes into a lot of things. Now, every really good manager has an ego, but how that ego is translated is the most important thing, right? Mourinho, probably the biggest ego of all, but he's won everything. Okay. Ancelotti has an ego, earned it. Pep has an ego, he's earned it. Klopp, Conte, Simeone, you know, all have egos. Tuchel, ego. But how they translate that, how you get men to believe in you, to follow you to the end of the earth. When you're a football manager, convincing one man to buy into your ideas is hard enough. Convincing 11, week in, week out, to believe in you and what you're trying to do is not an easy task. And man management is his Achilles heel. And that is really a bad situation, Tom, because he's the manager of Arsenal Football Club. And that is a huge challenge for him. He's 39 years old. His ego's different, right? He's still young himself. He can't accept certain behavior. Totally wanted someone to come in and clean house. We all did. But there's cleaning house and there's treating certain players differently and not being consistent in how you treat them. Patting Xhaka on the back as he gets a red card and goes off the pitch, unacceptable. Calling Pepe out for his red card, the right thing to do, but he shouldn't have done it so publicly maybe. If you're going to treat one player one way, you got to treat the other the same way. Players are more senior, they've won more, they'll get treated differently because they're elder statesmen, if you like. But what he's done, the way he's treated Saliba, you know, you ask yourself, well, is he worse than what we have? Guendouzi, he was a punk against Brighton, granted, but he did nothing to try and coerce him to work with his personality, his character. Maybe he needed to see, like, you know, a mind coach to help him curb his temper. These things are really important when you're managing a team. And he seems to ostracize players if he can't deal with them. And I think that's a really big problem for him.
The real Yanis has asked Tom's favourite question. Not sure if he has asked this so far, but Soph, what are your thoughts on Edu? This could be a fun one.
That interview was an absolute disaster, in my opinion. It would have been my recommendation from a PR perspective to not do that. Why? Because it seemed so desperate to sell us again on this process or project. The worst thing for me was it kind of underlined how it seems like this is why people shouldn't get too excited about these Conte rumours and a change, because what he was trying to say is, look, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. This is what we're trying to do. And he tried to sell us on this whole youth and then world-class angle. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you buy the world-class first and then integrate the youth into this team? We don't need more younger players. We need experienced players that the younger players can rely on, that they can put their stress and they can go to for advice. You know, we just don't have those kinds of players. Lacazette is really good like that. I mean, Aubameyang is a different kind of, he's not a leader. People love him and like him, but he's not a leader, right? Xhaka claims to be this leader, but he goes in two-footed against Chelsea and we lose and go down to 10 men.
Was it?
City, sorry.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a bit of a PR disaster. Now, people say, well, you guys wanted transparency. You got transparency. No. That was in response to the Gary Neville piece on Sky Sports, I thought. That was in response to, screw you guys. We know what we're doing. We have a strategy. Don't you question me or my job. And he just waffled a lot. And he talked about this plan of youth. And I'm thinking, hold on a second. We've seen this movie before. Wenger talked about youth. The club has been built on that for years. And where has it gotten us in the Premier League? Really, nowhere. No progress. We're out of Europe now. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if you're going to spend 150 million, why didn't you go get 3 world-class players, integrate the youth with those players, and then in January, go get your younger players, continue that plan. But notice our age bracket for players. Arteta likes control, Tom. That profile of player, that's the type of player you can control. And he's such an egomaniac in a lot of ways that I wonder, is the profile like that because that's the type of player that he can manage? I don't know. But as for Edu,
I hadn't thought about it like that, to be fair.
He's on thin ice for me, as is Arteta. If this doesn't work, I mean, you know, you got to give it time. But how much time? We don't have time. We're bottom of the league. We are bottom. Arsenal Football Club are bottom of the Premier League.
Yeah.
And we've got some really tough games coming up, you know. And they've tried. The Cronkies have given them a ton of money. I mean, 150 million.
They haven't, have they? They haven't.
The club has given them a ton of money.
Yeah.
The cash flow has given them a ton of money.
Yeah, they've gone, yes, you may spend the club's money. That's fine. Yeah, look, the Edu thing, I love the topic because it divides opinion so much. And there's so many different factors around Edu to consider. Because with everyone at the club, Edu, for me, is the one under the least amount of scrutiny from my perspective because he's the one that's done the least wrong. He's the one that's done more good things, I think, than anyone else at the club. And I think that probably says more about how few good things there are about anyone else. But I look at some of the things that Edu does and I can appreciate what he's trying to do. I'd not thought about what you brought up in the sense of the young players being easier to control. And I think there is definitely merit to that point. I wouldn't argue against that at all. What I think is true is that I wouldn't have spent 150 million on 3 world-class players. I would have spent it on, if say the 150 million was the budget, I would have spent it on 2. I would have brought in 2 world-class players and I would have used the other 50 million to cover the positions that we needed to add the depth, like backup keeper, backup left back and backup central midfield. Like so Lokonga, Ramsdale and Tavares, I think that's about 50 million quid what we spent on those 3. So I probably would have brought those 3 in. And then instead of saying bringing in Ben White, I would have probably gone, you know, well, let's keep that guy we spent 28 million quid on if Arteta was going to play him. I always said, look, I think it's the right idea to send him out on loan just because I don't think Arteta would ever play him. So I'd rather see him playing somewhere, proving him wrong. But say in theoretical terms, he would have played him, kept Saliba, so we didn't have to spend 50 million pounds on White. Then look at the attacking midfield area of the pitch. I don't think I would have splashed 70 million pounds on James Maddison because I don't think there's a 40 million pound difference between Maddison and Ødegaard, to be honest. I don't think there's a 40 million pound difference between those 2. But I would have looked around and gone, is there anyone who's genuinely world class in an attacking midfield role that can add massive amounts of creativity to Arsenal's team. And to be honest, off the top of my head, without sitting down for a few minutes and thinking and doing some research, I can't give you one. But maybe the chat box will start exploding with names that I'm not being able to think of on the spot.
You mean like Usain getting at? Why not just try? Even if Leon wanted to send him on loan or that type of player.
I would aim higher. Like you saying you wanted to bring 3 world-class players. I think Aouar is not world-class. I think he's someone that's inconsistent and has got the potential to be a very good player if he sorts out his inconsistencies. But I would have spent the 50 million quid on a world-class attacking midfield talent, and I would have spent 50 million pounds on a central midfielder. Now,
like Bissouma, you would have gone for Bissouma.
I probably I mean, to be fair, and then if Bissouma was seemingly available for like 30 to 40 million,
he was,
quid,
yeah.
So I probably could have got some change and then improved the right back, which I looked at as a really key position. And Tomiyasu, I kind of get this idea. I quite like the guy. I've looked into him quite a bit now, and I'm seeing a lot of good things about him. Or a Bruno Guimaraes in midfield. Dani Olmo's a great shout, Real Yanis. Thank you for that. That's a really good shout from RB Leipzig. Maybe someone of his kind of caliber that would have really added loads. Or, a Szoboszlai, because I love talking about him. Like someone that's got the creativity and goal-scoring abilities in attacking midfield. That type of player. But I'm not sure that they were ever going to do that in this window. I thought they were always going to go to the young, the youth side of things first. And then I'm kind of looking at 2022 and going, right, they've said they want to blend world-class with youth. Well, they've brought in 6 23 and under players. If they don't, in the summer of 2022, target at least 2 transformative world-class figures for the team, then what they said was a load of rubbish, basically, because then they're not following through on what they've theorized and prophesized about what they want to do. What I will say about the whole interview is that I think you have to take it with a massive grain of salt. I don't think anything Arteta or Edu or anyone at the club says publicly is a fair representation of what's happening on the inside. And it might be worse what's going on the inside. We don't know. But I think the reason one of my theories about why Edu didn't say give us a target. I have a couple of theories about. One of them is because I feel like he genuinely thinks he's done a good job with the signings that we've made. And I think that he has concerns about whether or not the manager he has can actually enact his vision of the team. But since they promoted Arteta to manager, he has no control about whether Arteta leaves. They're kind of on a level playing field. So he's kind of just got to, just kind of keep things going with Arteta because he has no real superiority over him. So I feel like there is maybe an element of that he didn't want to set a target because I feel like if he'd have set a target publicly and we'd have failed, based upon the selection decisions and poor coaching of the manager, he would have, been thrown under the bus for that, and they would have pointed towards the signings. When I actually think that what he's given Arteta is a very good group of players that is far better than where we are right now in the league. And anything that happens on the pitch is the finger points squarely at Arteta. It can't go towards Edu for me, because he's improved the squad. Like, he's made us better than what we were last season. And we've spent more than any other Premier League club. So you look at the gap that we're trying to close, and you'd imagine that against some of the teams that were around us, like Spurs, I feel like our squad has closed the gap with them compared to last season. They added, who did they add? Christian Romero?
Yes.
Who else did they add?
I try not to pay too much attention to them these days.
Yeah,
but
I feel like the business we did closed the gap, if there was a gap between us and them, or just improved us in comparison to them. I feel like we've closed the gap with Leicester, even though they did some decent business with the likes of Samara, etc. I think they brought in some decent players, but I feel like we closed the gap in terms of squad with them. West Ham, I think we definitely closed the squad. They've not got Jesse Lingard anymore, so I feel like there's no excuses to say that we shouldn't be closing the gap on them. And teams like Aston Villa have done some great business, but losing Jack Grealish is a massive, massive loss to them. So I feel like the business that we've done has allowed us to compete a lot better than we were positioned to last season, especially in terms of, like, if Tierney was injured, we had Granit Xhaka playing left back. Our right back we've sorted out. Centre midfield, we've added Lokonga in there, despite not bringing in a first team centre midfielder. But now for me, it's always going to go to Arteta now. It's always the finger will go to him, and I can't look at Edu from my perspective as being culpable for mistakes on the pitch and team selection.
He's given him the tools. Now it's Arteta's team. He's got to make it work now. It's out of Edu's hands, like you said, right? Here's a positive, right? And there are some. Lokonga could end up being one of the signings of the season for any team. There is something very special about him. I love watching him play. You're not captain of Anderlecht at 21 years old, done given the armband by Vincent Kompany if you're not really good. He had a great game for Belgium the other day. There is something about, I can't wait to see how he and Partey play together. That is something to be very positive about. Some of the players we're talking about, Tom, it is so hard to attract players when you do not have European football. Yeah. It might have been a bit different if we were in the Champions League, not because we can win it. If we'd have won that Europa League and qualified for Champions League football, right? Not because we can win it, but what it brings to the club from a fiscal perspective. It's huge. And what does that bring? Players want to play in the Champions League nowadays. But even when we weren't in the Champions League, we could dangle the Europa League carrot as a vehicle to get back into the Champions League. We signed Aubameyang, Lacazette, Partey, Gabriel, Pepe, Tierney, with no Champions League football, but they knew they were going to play in Europe and they had a road back into the Champions League. Now we don't have Europe at all. Why would some of those top players come to us when they can go? Locatelli's going to, Italian players don't really like to come to England anyway, but he's going to go to Juventus. He's going to play Champions League football. Why would Dest leave Barcelona when he's going to be playing in the Champions League? So that is the biggest challenge of all, I think. This is why we've also had to go down this route. And it's spun a little bit by selling us on youth. But I'll tell you something, if we could have signed some of those players, I think we're in a better position to do so having European football. That has absolutely killed us this season, killed us. So we've spent more to try and get back there. And we're sitting at the bottom of the Premier League. Now it's over to Arteta, as you said.
Absolutely. We're going to try and get a few more of your questions in the chat box. Mr. Joe Kerr, what 2 accolades do you both see as achievable in the next 2 seasons? If we are in the project, then what objective targets do you have? Give me your 2 targets for the season that Arteta didn't tell us, Soph.
Let's be competitive again. That's the first step. Be competitive, be consistent. The rest will come. Let's not talk about top 6. Let's not talk about top 4. Let's not talk about any of that stuff. Just those 2 things we need to start with, because that's what we haven't done in the Premier League for a long time. I think that looks like crawling up the table, and if we end up in 6th, it'd be a miracle. It would be a great achievement. Tastes like vinegar coming out of my mouth, but it's my truth. And I tell you, if we can win the League Cup, I know this may sound crazy to some people. We haven't won it since 1993. Wenger never won that trophy. Can you believe it? Never won the FA Cup. How many times? And we've won that 14 times. If we can win the League Cup, it's still a trophy. These players need to understand and learn about winning and how it tastes, and then that breeds wanting more, needing more. That's why we went on that FA Cup run from 14, 15 onwards. They got a taste of it. They liked winning. We were a cup team, one-off games. We can do that. That's got to be translated to the Premier League now, Tom. Consistency in the league over 38 games. That has been one of our toughest tasks that we've underachieved for a lot of years now.
All I want to see is progress. Like that's all I can ask. Like I know people out there going, look, we should start the season with wanting to be champions or wanting to be a top 4 team. I don't look at that as a realistic target right now with the competition that's there with Man United, Man City, Chelsea, and Liverpool, and then you look at the other teams that are trying to break into that top 4. Leicester every season improving. Spurs are always wanting to be there. Everton and Aston Villa have always got these kind of ambitions to get into European football, as have West Ham seemingly, and have achieved that last year. So top 4 is just not realistic for us right now. But to get to that top 6, to progress on last season's result, and then when you say if we were to finish, say 6th, I would look at it and go, that's progress. Like we've progressed. And then you go into the next season, you go, can we get 5th? And that if we do get 5th, we're going in an upward trajectory. Because what we've done over the last 10 years, Sophie, is we've gone backwards. So Arsenal must be moving in the right direction. If we go 6th this season, 5th the following season, then we can look to say, all right, we've done that. Let's go for a 4th place finish. What do you think?
Tom, we just need to win a game. Right now, we just need to win a game. And winning a game and go on a little bit of a run, get competitive, be consistent. And then whatever happens after that is gravy. Because we shouldn't have, like you said, there's no lofty goals for the top part of the table this season. It's about starting to play as a team, not as individuals, really gelling together and just win a few games. Let's start there.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Willie just said the same thing. Willie said, win a game. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Score a goal, Daniel.
Just score a goal would be great if we could do that. Anyway, we're going to wrap things up there. Sophie, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, as it always is. Do give yourself a shout out and tell people where they can find you. Yeah,
give us a shot at the Highbury Squad over on YouTube and check out our content. Thanks as always for having me, Tom. Really appreciate it. Always a good football conversation with you. And let's hope that our team wins this weekend. That's all we want. Let's win a game. Let's go.
Absolutely, and hopefully we can put in a great performance. Just before we go, Tom Sabol, I have to ask again, what does Xhaka hold over the manager's board and our owners? Causation or correlation? We've sucked since he's been here. Look, they just seem to like him, Tom. I don't know what it is. They just seem to like him, and I don't think we could go on for a whole new podcast about Xhaka.
Oh, yeah. Maybe he's got some dodgy pictures, you know.
Who knows? Thank you for tuning in, everyone. You've got 2 more bits of content that you can tune into this evening, because Sophie's going to be doing a show at 8 o'clock. I'm also going to be joining the boys over at the Arsenal Lounge with Mo and Lee Judges as well. So 2 more bits of content. You can watch one live. You can catch up on the other. Do it either way. It's up to you. But make sure you go and check out the content 100%. You'll find a link to the Highbury Squad in today's video description. Drop us a like. Drop us a subscription if you are new. And as always, up the Arsenal.